Greetings, ladies, gentlemen, and of course, gamers of the jury. Alex here, a lawyer who loves games. On today's docket is a verdict or full review for Doom Eternal's DLC, The Ancient Gods, Parts 1 and 2. The Ancient Gods doubles down on Doom Eternal's excellent gameplay, putting even the most seasoned slayers to trial by fire in some of the most hellish arenas yet. These expansions also continue to abide by the base game's steadfast adherence to the rule of cool, but they also bring fewer surprises and stumble in a few places, making them a bit harder to recommend than the masterpiece that is Eternal. Let's begin the trial. With this DLC, id Software took a don't fix it if it ain't broke mentality, essentially giving people, or at least me, exactly what we want, more Doom Eternal. Also, a quick procedural note, I'm only looking at the single player expansion aspects to Doom Eternal's DLC, not the multiplayer and cosmetic stuff. If you do care about that, I'm sure it only adds value, but I'm ruling it irrelevant for the purposes of this trial. Also, while The Ancient Gods is sold as 2 parts, they're really just one continuous case file. Part 2 is the slightly stronger half for me, but they're pretty close in terms of quality, and they flow seamlessly together. Play them in order, and I'll be judging them as a single package. The Ancient Gods continues right where the main story leaves off with 3 levels in each of its 2 episodes. There's also a short extra chapter in part 2 for the final boss. Each level clocks in right around the hour mark, or that's at least for me on Hurt Me Plenty, which is normal. That's the difficulty I played on. Every single level looks amazing and distinct, and most of the new levels are right on par with the quality of the best the main game had to offer, in terms of throwing great combat encounters at you. That said, there are some inconsistencies compared with the mostly perfect main game. The Ancient Gods Part 1 starts with a bang, or actually more of a splash in this case. You're sent to the UAC Atlantica facility, a high-tech ocean rig that looks nothing like anything we've ever seen before in a Doom game. And as someone with a bit of a hyperfixation on boats and shipwrecks, this level felt tailor-made for me, especially when you dive down to the bottom of the ocean to collect the next MacGuffin. Talk about cool. Unfortunately, Part 1 front-loads its best levels. The Blood Swamps, level 2, and Corrupted Urdak, level 3, still look great, but they can't quite match Atlantica's creativity. The Blood Swamps in particular have a fog and poison gimmick that's more annoying than challenging. Part 2's 3 main levels are all great though. You go to a fantasy level with vistas that would feel right at home in the visuals of Final Fantasy XVI. That's one of the best looking games I've ever played, by the way, so huge compliment there. Then you go back to Earth, which has been reclaimed from the demons after an unknown length of time. Finally, you end up in the innermost reaches of Hell, which feels like a high-tech Mordor, and has all kinds of crazy lore implications. You can also tell this level came out pretty close to Avengers Endgame. All of these levels have a slightly streamlined design compared to the levels of the base campaign, for better or for worse. There are no challenges whatsoever this time around, which I actually appreciate. I don't really like doing challenges in Doom games. I just want to rip and tear how I want. But Ancient Gods tilts the scales even further towards combat, emphasizing exploration less than the main game. There are still secrets to find, but most of them are hard to miss lore tidbits that aren't tied to progression. Considering that Eternal nailed the exploration combat balance, at least in my opinion, for a good Doom game, this move even further away from exploration here is slightly disappointing, and I hope the needle is pushed back a bit towards exploration in the Dark Ages. The Ancient Gods makes the wise decision to start you at full power. Make sure your skills are to match. I highly suggest playing Ancient Gods only after beating a run of Eternal, as you'll want your combat instincts to be sharp as attack. This expansion is at least as challenging as the hardest stuff in the main campaign, and it shows no mercy, dishing out its maximum sentence of difficulty right off the bat. And plea bargaining with the demons is not an option. Go in rusty and half-cocked and you will not have a good time, because it will just keep getting harder from then on.
It's too hard, even on Hurt Me Plenty.
Objection!
I honestly thought that the difficulty, well, hard, was still more than manageable. As long as you're able to deal with the stacking challenges that the base game threw at you, you should be able to handle the Ancient Gods as well as it continues to ramp up. It certainly pulls no punches, but I never really got stuck. Plus, you get a few new tools here to make it a little easier to keep the demons at bay. Neither parts of the Ancient Gods actually add that many new mechanics for the Slayer. They instead rely on the excellent underlying mechanics from the base game. Part 1 only gives you a few new runes, and none of them really shake up the game all that much. One I did find to be exceptionally useful. Anytime you lose a life, it gives you a short window where if you kill whoever murdered you, you get that life back, and I highly recommend that rune if you're having any trouble. Part 2 is likewise pretty sparse in actual new tools for the Slayer, but it's still a bit better, and that you get a massive warhammer, the Sentinel Hammer, because it's cool. The Sentinel Hammer essentially functions like a massive piñata bat, sending out a shockwave that blows apart groups of fodder into bursts of resources. It also extends stuns on foes like the Marauder, and mercifully is replenished naturally in combat, meaning you can use it a lot more than your other power weapons, so it's pretty damn versatile. On top of the hammer, Part 2 levels feature grapple points for your super shotgun that'll really make you feel like Spider-Man. It does feel a bit undercooked and clumsy, but hey, it's cool as hell, and you'll never really have to do any jump that's difficult enough to be frustrating. And I'll take any excuse to use the super shotgun more, but it does make you wonder why these grapple points weren't in the base game. Most of what makes the Ancient Gods fresh actually comes from piling on new enemy types that crank up the complexity and difficulty of Doom Eternal's already insane combat puzzles. Part 1 introduces highlights like the Spirit, a spectral parasite that super buffs whatever demon it possesses. Kill its host, and you have just seconds to ghost bust it with the plasma rifle, otherwise it'll dive into its next victim. Then there's the Bloodmaker, a powerful angelic foe that demands a perfectly timed headshot before it can unleash a devastating attack. Part 1 also has a few short boss fights, but like the base game, I didn't exactly fall in love with them. Both are gimmicky and repetitive, but hey, at least one looks like the Flux construct from Tears of the Kingdom. That's kind of fun. Part 2 brings back the new foes from Part 1 and stacks on even more new demons, most of which are unapologetically designed to mess with your flow. But Eternal revels in the fact that it's a video game, and it does little to hide that with how on the nose these new foes are and the ways they shake up combat. And frankly, I don't mind that the foes are a bit silly in how they deal with you, because that keeps the combat fresh and your brain in gear, and as long as you play smart, juggle your cooldowns, and exploit weaknesses, you will survive. For example, you'll want to save the Screecher zombie for last because it will buff everything else upon death. So whatever you do, do not shoot it. The Cursed Prowler, on the other hand, needs to be killed right away before it curses you, otherwise it's a race against time to catch up to it and melee it before you drop dead. Riot Soldiers are impervious to any damage except splash damage from behind, so tighten up your rocket detonation timing, soldier. Stone Imps, like the spirits in Part 1, force you to use an attachment you've probably neglected, requiring you to blast them away with the auto mod on the shotgun. And my favorite new foes, the Armored Barons, are totally bulletproof until you counter their melee attacks with a well-aimed shot. This gives you a chance to chip away at their soft glowing innards. By the end, you've got the base game's already fearsome roster plus this laundry list of Nightmare additions. id Software gleefully throws them at you in the most diabolical combinations imaginable, pushing your skill ceiling higher and higher. If you love a challenge, the higher difficulties will keep you busy for a long time. Me, I need a break for now, but I already can't wait to crank it up and suffer all over again. In terms of plot, both parts of the Ancient Gods features a continuation of the somewhat nonsensical, over-the-top, but always in service to the rule of cool story as the base game. In a surprise to quite literally no one, demons are still hounding the Earth even after the events of Eternal, so you need to find a new series of allies and MacGuffins to finish them off for good. I quite enjoyed where the story went. It's tongue-in-cheek the whole way through. I mean, the craziest stuff just happens around the Slayer. Spoiler warning here, skip to the closing argument if you care. You ride a dragon for no apparent reason other than, it's cool. And in true Slayer fashion, he ignores all of the exposition, never saying a word while some god drones on, and then, instead of resurrecting that god like he's supposed to, he gives him the infamous Slayer stare and decides, nah, I'd rather bring back the Dark Lord so I can kill him for good. Then, in a big twist, it turns out that the Dark Lord, Davoth, is actually just some sort of evil Doom guy. It's always cool seeing villainous forms of your heroes, and Doom is no exception. I don't entirely understand what's going on with the lore here, like is Davoth an alt-universe version of the Slayer? Does it imply that not only is the Slayer the only entity strong enough to beat Hell, but he's also the only one strong enough to rule it? I don't know. At the end of the day, I don't really think it matters all that much. Much like the rest of the story, it's just excuses to have the Slayer go to cool places and fight cool new foes. And I look forward to falling into the rabbit hole of Doom lore YouTube when I finally decide to solve these mysteries. Part 2's finale is a short extra level that's basically just the fight with Davoth. This is, unfortunately, a very disappointing fight. It's cool that Davoth can suck up your health just like you can do with your foes when you glory kill them, But beyond that, it's really just a very, very drawn out Marauder fight. Strafe at mid-range until you bait out a green flash attack, super shotgun counter, hammer, minigun, then rinse and repeat over multiple phases that barely change. Even Eternal's nearly unimpeachable base game had weak bosses, so fumbling the final boss here should really come as no surprise. Still, the premise is so good. Mecha Evil Doomslayer, I mean, come on. It does become extra disappointing to see the ball dropped here. You're rewarded at least with a final cutscene that's maybe the coolest single moment of all of Eternal. I'll let it speak for itself.
Before you strike him down.
Cool.
A common crime with DLC, the Ancient Gods does have a somewhat unclear pricing model that, even at best, feels a tad steep. You can buy these expansions separately, Part 1 and Part 2, for $20 a pop. Don't. For just 3 levels apiece, plus a short final boss fight in Part 2, that's highway robbery. And these expansions work best when played back-to-back anyway. The better, though still pricey option is the Year 1 Pass for $30. This bundles both parts together. Even then, it is kind of a stretch when you consider how much bigger the base game is, and how much of what already makes the Ancient Gods great is simply just building on what Doom Eternal already perfected. Although I quite enjoyed this DLC, the price means I highly recommend waiting for a sale. Luckily, Steam is having a sale right now, and future sales should be common. The $12 it was at when I wrote the review is a steal. Without further ado, it's time for the verdict. The Ancient Gods takes what's already incredible about Doom Eternal and simply gives you more. So how bad can that be? Sure, your arsenal barely expands, some levels feel more simplified, and there are a few weak points here. But new enemy types and environments keep the combat sharp, challenging even the most confident of Doomslayers. The steep, confusing pricing knocks it down a peg, but if you're ready to crank the heat after the base game, this is absolutely worth your time. Play it if you enjoyed prosecuting demons with extreme prejudice in Eternal, you enjoy a good challenge, and you want to leave no demon unpunished, even if that demon is you. If you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe to join the jury for future cases. And with that, ladies, gentlemen, and gamers of the jury, court is adjourned. Until next time.